Let me ask you a question. What would you get if you were to combine Lamine Yamal and Fermin Lopez, two of La Masia's greatest recent youngsters? You would get quite a player, but he's actually already at Barcelona, and his name is Toni Fernandez. This guy was born in 2008, and he is widely seen as La Masia's biggest talent. This season, he's been absolutely killing it for Barcelona Athletic as well. And with the busy match schedule, it seems like it is time for Hansi Flick to start giving Toni Fernandez some first team minutes. He should definitely consider giving him a chance, and in this video we'll break down why. First of all, who is Toni Fernandez actually? Well, he's a 16-year-old attacker who only recently started playing for Barcelona Athletic. He has actually mainly been played as a striker during his years at La Masia, making him a very unique player already. After all, most La Masia talents are midfielders known for their technical playing style. Strikers are usually kind of rare at La Masia, making Toni Fernandez a really interesting prospect to look forward to, but he is 16, so he's still versatile enough to also play in other roles. He is comfortable at right wing, for example, which is no surprise given that he's a left-footed attacker with great dribbling skills. That is why he's even gained a lot of comparisons to Lamine Yamal. On top of that, Toni Fernandez can perfectly play as an attacking midfielder too. In this role, he'll offer you a great threat in front of goal, and being left-footed, he would remind a lot of people of Fermin Lopez when playing there. So his main qualities are dribbling, shooting, and his general footballing IQ. He is an extremely versatile attacker, and in some way, a mix of Lamine Yamal and Fermin Lopez. Based on that, he should definitely get a chance in the first team this season. But why would Hansi Flick give him that chance? Well, first of all, Toni Fernandez is in great form. He's only 16, but he's already been able to become a starting 11 player in Barcelona Athletic. During his debut for Barcelona's second team, he managed to be the man of the match with an unbelievable goal and an assist. He was a threat to the defense all game long coming from that right hand side. He was constantly looking to take players on, and he barely made any bad decisions. His playing style was really reminiscent of Lamine Yamal. Ever since then, he has only confirmed that he's in great form. He scored again in Barcelona Athletic's recent game, and he's been training with the first team this week. Hansi Flick has also really been impressed with him in training. Ever since Flick arrived at Barcelona, he was surprised by the level of these young La Masia players, and Toni Fernandez is the cornerstone of the next La Masia generation. Long story short, Toni Fernandez is in great form right now, so now is a great time to let him slowly integrate into the first team and give him some well-earned minutes. He is even more important given the current injury situation at Barcelona. Both Dani Olmo and Fermin Lopez have suffered injuries that will probably keep them on the sidelines for about a month. That's a huge blow that Hansi Flick probably wasn't expecting. I mean, not only did he lose Dani Olmo, he also lost the one player that was supposed to replace Dani Olmo. So how do you solve this problem? There are multiple options of course, but playing Toni Fernandez in that Dani Olmo role is certainly one of them. He's got the right profile to be able to play in that role. But not only does he have the finishing and the shooting qualities, he is also comfortable going out to the right or the striker position. So during the game, Toni Fernandez could switch positions with the likes of Lamine Yamal and Lewandowski to create a really dynamic attack that is hard to defend against. So as you see, Toni Fernandez would be a really interesting option to play in that Dani Olmo role. But now we're just talking about Toni Fernandez being a short-term replacement for Dani Olmo and Fermin Lopez. What about the long term? Of course, Toni Fernandez is only 16, he still has a lot of time, and he doesn't need to break through this season or even next season to be successful at Barcelona. However, in the long term, it is interesting to talk about where he would ideally play. We've already seen that he's got 3 possible positions, and the attacking midfielder position is actually the one that he's played in the least thus far in his career. So even though Toni Fernandez might be seen as a replacement for Dani Olmo nowadays, that attacking midfielder role might not be his best position. So what about the other positions? At right wing, Toni Fernandez is a really interesting option for Hansi Flick, simply because of the fact that he seems to be the player closest to Lamine Yamal in terms of profile. He is left-footed, he loves taking on players, and he tends to put in a lot of crosses into the box. And we all know that Lamine Yamal is still only 17, he is not even an adult yet, his body is still developing. We have to be careful with him, we don't want him to end up like Pedri. In other words, Lamine Yamal needs to get enough rest this season. Toni Fernandez might be younger and more inexperienced than Ferran Torres or Pau Victor, but like we already said, he is the one that resembles Lamine Yamal the most. If Hansi Flick wants his team to have the same kind of balance and play with the same kind of patterns, it wouldn't be bad for him to choose Toni Fernandez as his main replacement for Lamine Yamal. On top of that, he could also use Toni Fernandez as a replacement for Lewandowski. Okay, they are 2 very different kind of strikers, but during his youth, Toni Fernandez played most of his games as a center forward. He is developed to be a great finisher and make runs into the box, so it would be really interesting to see Hansi Flick try him as a striker. And I mean, just imagine it works out and Toni Fernandez actually performs well there. then we would suddenly have another option to rotate Lewandowski with. That would be a welcome relief, knowing that Lewandowski is already 36. Of course, there are other options in the striker role too, think about Ansu Fati, and in the long term, Barcelona might look elsewhere for a Lewandowski replacement. But the idea of Toni Fernandez as a striker should maybe be given a chance by Hansi Flick. Now, there is another thing that we cannot just leave unmentioned here. Toni Fernandez, as a lot of you probably know, has a cousin who was also born in 2008 and who has also been killing it for Barcelona Athletic. Guille Fernandez. So why did I make a video saying why Hansi Flick needs to trust Toni Fernandez, and why don't I think Guille Fernandez might be as important as his cousin right now? Well, don't get me wrong, I think Guille is probably just as talented as his cousin, and ask any of the youth coaches at La Masia what they think of Guille, and a lot of them would probably say he is La Masia's most talented midfielder. But as a replacement for Dani Olmo in the team at the moment, he might not be the ideal option. You see, Dani Olmo is a player who's not only got that creative side to him with great vision and passing, he's also someone who has real attacking instincts. He's direct in attack and he doesn't hesitate. His shooting is phenomenal, he is an attacker as much as he is a midfielder. The same goes for Fermin Lopez. That's why it generally sucks for Hansi Flick that those two are out injured at the same time. Now, if you take a look at Toni Fernandez, he also has a DNA of an attacker. I mean, he's a striker, a winger, a 10, he's perfect to replace Dani Olmo with. Guille Fernandez, however, of all players resembles Pedri the most probably. He can definitely play as a 10, but you won't have the same goal-scoring output with him that you'd have with the likes of Olmo, Fermin and Toni. Guille would make the play and control the midfield like Pedri does, which isn't bad, but Barcelona's attack would simply have less goal-scoring prowess. So Guille might maybe ideally play as a creative deep playmaker like Pedri has been doing in the first games of the season under Hansi Flick. Then again, both Pedri and Guille Fernandez would still probably work out well as that attacking midfielder at the end of the day. Toni Fernandez is simply the option that is most similar to Dani Olmo and Fermin Lopez. And what about other options? I mean, Rafinha, Pablo Torre, Noah Darvig, Unai Hernandez, they could technically all play in that attacking midfielder role, but right now I do think that Toni Fernandez is the best option. At least if you're not counting Rafinha. Rafinha has been one of Barcelona's best players this season, and whether he's coming from the left or from the middle, he will always add a lot to Barcelona's attack in terms of his speed of execution, his shots from distance, his footballing IQ, and his sheer individual class. He might be the #1 best option to replace Dani Olmo and Fermin Lopez with. As a matter of fact, Hansi Flick should have probably just played Rafinha centrally in the recent game against Monaco. Pedri played there in reality now, and it seemed as if the team was lacking Pedri in that deeper role to make the play. They didn't really win the midfield battle before Eric Garcia even got his red card. So Rafinha might be the best solution in that 10 role right now. Pablo Torre would also be really interesting, but Toni Fernandez might be in better form right now given what we've seen from him in La Masia. Noah Darvig is also possible, but Toni Fernandez has already been Barcelona Athletic's best player up till now. It wouldn't make sense to not give Toni Fernandez his chance now that he's in such great form. So Hansi Flick should definitely consider giving Toni Fernandez some minutes this season. He is a great replacement for Dani Olmo and Fermin Lopez, but over the course of the season he could become the #1 replacement for Lamine Yamal, or even play as a striker if necessary. Toni Fernandez is simply too valuable of a player not to use for Hansi Flick, not to mention that he's in absolute great form right now. Yeah, like so often in recent years, it seems like La Masia might again save Barcelona when they need it most. That was it for today's video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and feel free to share your own opinion on Toni Fernandez in the comments down below. Of course, Força Toni Fernandez, Força Barça, and have a good day.